The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.
On this episode of Comes with the Territory, WNBA breakout all-star and USVI tourism ambassador Aliyah Bosto is in studio with us. Stay tuned for this special one-on-one interview. St. Croix taxi operators shared their concerns at a town hall meeting. We'll have the details. Plus,
that behavior which he demonstrated was really unbecoming as a senator.
She made an allegation that I refute.
Senator Carla Joseph alleges sexual harassment countered by Senator Franklin Johnson's denial. And the Senate Committee on Ethical Conduct is investigating. We'll have more. The Virgin Islands Supreme Court is deliberating the legislature's decision to expel former Senator-at-Large Stephen Payne for sexual harassment against a Senate employee. Meanwhile, the employee who made the claims is suing Payne and the 34th legislature. We'll have the details. And later, this week's panel joins the conversation to analyze these issues and more. Comes with the Territory starts now. Welcome to Comes with the Territory. I'm Leslie Camisiang. Aliyah Bosto is the embodiment of living Virgin Islands history, and the fun part is we all get to watch.
Out to Boston. Boston will hoist and send us into overtime.
The St. Thomas native has become the first ever WNBA player from the Virgin Islands, where she received Rookie of the Year honors with the Indiana Fever. She has won an NCAA basketball championship and in 2022 was the Consensus National Player of the Year and unanimous first team All-American. And that's just some of her many accolades. While basketball has taken this island girl all over the world, she has remained true to the Virgin Islands and has always remembered her home, giving back to her community and reaching out in many ways to help make the next generation of Aliyah Bostons possible.
3, 2, 1.
What does it feel like to being recognized by elected officials and being recommended for the key of the territory?
It really is a special moment because, I mean, no matter where people always ask where I'm from, I'm like, I'm from the Virgin Islands, but I moved to Massachusetts. But I always make sure I say that I'm from the Virgin Islands because this is where it all started. Playing in the Griffith Park, round the field, 6 a.m. with Uncle Rudy, with Coach Bruley. I mean, this is where it all began.
Aliyah is such an inspiration for all Virgin Islanders, and she embodies the true spirit of the territory, and it's a source of pride for so many of us. But something tells me that she is just getting started, and we will have more accomplishments and history to celebrate. Welcome to the show, Aliyah. This is such an honor.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we only have a little bit of time, so I want to get right down to it. Tell us about, in your words, what it was like growing up here in the Virgin Islands.
Oh, I loved it. I mean, even just thinking back to the memories, especially when I'm in the States and I'm like, oh, I definitely miss the beach, or I definitely miss my family. But I mean, it was really special. I think one thing that separates the Virgin Islands is the community. Like, you have people that continue to cheer for you, people that just want to see you win. And it's so nice to be able to come back here and people just talk about how they've just continued to watch. And so it's really nice.
You know, in your testimony before the legislature, you mentioned playing around the field and playing at Griffith Park and some of the people that were inspirational in you becoming who you have become. Name some of those people.
Yeah, I mean, I think first, definitely just Uncle Rudy. I think he did a great job just starting Alexis and I off. And you have Coach Bruley. But I definitely have to continue to thank my family as well. I mean, God has just put so many people in my sister and I's path to be where we are, and he's opened so many doors that it's kind of hard to start naming people and then stop, because there's definitely going to be some people like, hey, I know, like, I know you. I know I helped you here or there. And so it's really nice, but definitely my family, my response, especially opening her door for my sister and I to move to the States. So a lot of people.
So let's talk about that transition, because I've heard your mom's side of the story. I've heard your dad's side of the
Didn't
story.
hear my dad's side of the story.
He's
You
always
wouldn't
like,
be-
she never told me
And,
what was
and we
going
still
on.
here. Like, that's exactly, he will stand by that. It doesn't matter what time of day.
So you moved to Massachusetts, and what was the transition like for you?
It honestly wasn't a hard transition. It was quite easy, and I think part of that was because of how young we were. Like, for us, it was more of like, okay, this is really exciting. We get to stay in the States, and we went up there looking for AAU team, looking for camps, and it was kind of like, oh, well, do you guys want to, stay up there? And we never actually came back down from the summer, and so I think for us, it was really just, okay, well, this is where we're gonna be. I know our parents probably had it a lot harder, but us as just kids were like, okay, sure.
Rolling right along.
Yeah, this sounds good to me.
That's awesome. So what is some of your more like memorable moments? Because, as an island kid, sometimes I remember for every island kid, the first time we see snow, it's like, oh my God, it's snowing.
Oh yeah, that was for me too. We were at a tournament in New Hampshire, and everyone was talking, and they were saying that it's gonna start snowing. So I was super excited, and then I went outside. I was like, this is great. I was like, it's really cold. I'm gonna come back inside. And then when we actually went back to Massachusetts, that first winter was like the worst winter in New England. And it was kind of crazy. I was like, there's no way I just came from hot and sunny to cold. But you know what? That never stopped me from wearing shorts in the winter.
Really?
I'll still
You're
do it
one
to
of
this
those
day.
people.
I am.
Okay.
I am.
So you get to Massachusetts and you're on a new team. What was the transition from playing ball here in the Virgin Islands to moving to playing with teams in the States?
Yeah, I'll focus on AU for this part of it just because I think that was the major difference. It was a lot more intensity. There was a lot more discipline towards it in a sense. But the training, it was intense training. Our path to training. So we played for IXL and we lived in Massachusetts, but that team was out of New York, New Jersey. So every Saturday, my aunt would wake up at the crack of dawn, drive us to Connecticut. We'd then get a ride with one of our teammates, who then we would drive from Connecticut to New Jersey, and then we'd stay the weekend with our teammate. And I think that just shows the amount of sacrifice, the amount that goes into the training to be where you want to be.
Now, I remember when you came back home, and I thought this was so cool that you made your decision, you announced your decision to go to South Carolina, back here in the territory. You brought your team down from Worcester Academy. You had a great game out at Eudora Ken, and you made the big announcement. And I remember watching, I actually volunteered. I never called sports in my life, but that was like the first time for that game. And I remember seeing people from Alaska tuned in. I'm like, oh my goodness, people are tuned in from all over the country to hear where you were going to college. Let's talk a little bit about that experience, and what was it for your teammates to finally come down to the territory?
Yeah, it was really special, especially for them coming down, being able to experience the Virgin Islands, all that's to come, be able to play down here, compete, but then also be able to share that moment with me. I think it was really special just to be able to, in a sense, not forget where home is, and also make the Virgin Islanders and the people that support me be able to be a part of that experience. I remember it was a great crowd, especially super excited. So it was really nice. I'm really glad that I did it because it's definitely a core memory for me.
So I remember the first time I had a chance to interview, it was on radio. You were back home for a visit, and the first thing I did was I called your dad, and I was like, oh my God, she is the complete package. And I could almost see I was like, this is it. I was like, you have in your daughter she is a star, there's no question. And I saw when you were at Worcester Academy. Now that you have had the impact and made the history, and like I said in the introduction, we're getting to witness it all, which is so cool. Does it ever stop you? Are you ever in awe? You're like, oh my God, or is it like people telling you how amazing you are and how much you mean to us? Does it ever get tiring? How do you handle all that?
It's definitely something that you have to just be able to prioritize and compartmentalize, honestly, because it's definitely an experience that I would never want to go away. And so just being able to understand each moment, I think sometimes there are moments where I get overwhelmed with everyone one year and the next year, but I also understand that this is something special and one that not everyone can have the opportunity to make such an impact, not just in the basketball world, but in their community. So it's definitely a double-edged sword, but it's a great sword that I enjoy, that I think I'm learning more and more each day, more and more appearances, more and more opportunities, how to continue to handle all of that.
Yeah, because it can be a lot. And when you're home, like, everybody knows you, and then you have everybody from little kids to adults
and they
that
know
are just...
my mom.
Yes, well, Cleo is a celebrity. She's an
That's
island
what I'm
celebrity.
saying. So, you know,
and your dad.
You know what they do? They go through the parents.
I'm not gonna lie.
Did you go through the parents?
That's
See,
right. That's
I tell
right.
you, this is exactly what I'm talking about.
But see, that's part of what makes you so awesome, and that's what I saw in you: your sense of humor, beauty, intelligence, just a complete package. And we know that right now you graduated with your communications degree from the University of South Carolina, and you've already started your broadcasting career. Like, how did that all, shape up and come into fruition? Yeah,
it was definitely something that I was excited about in college, and then as I graduated, I knew I wanted to get into broadcasting. I have an amazing agency that they just work so tirelessly to make sure that I'm able to do the stuff that I would like to do. And when I talked to them about getting into broadcast, they were on it right away, and they knew that this was a great opportunity, especially being fresh out of college, being fresh out of such a top university like South Carolina, and having that experience as a player and now being able to translate it behind the desk or in games. So it was really exciting for me because it's a moment that being able to complete my first season this year, it's like, whoa, okay, I feel comfortable. I know I can do this. And I'm glad that I was able to have that experience, because whenever the ball stops bouncing, like, this is a great way to continue to stick with it, especially having a player's point of view.
People might see the successes, but there's always adversity that comes along. And your faith has always been at the forefront of your life. And I think that anybody that has followed it's not just like, some athletes get on, I'd like to thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. For you, it's like genuine. It's in everything you do. How does your faith help you handle adversity? And tell us about moment in time during your career, or even when you were in college, that it was like, okay, you might have doubted a little bit, but how did you cope with it, and how, most of all, did your faith help you through that moment?
Yeah, my faith has continued to grow, and I think most importantly, it has grown a lot through my college years. I think that's where I was really able to find my footing and find my understanding of God's word and his promises. And I think that's helped me a lot on my journey. There's definitely been hard times, whether that's on the basketball court or off the court. I think off the court, the most things for me, I've had some people that were really close to me pass away, and that really took a toll on me, whether I was able to show it or not, just because it's always hard when you lose someone. But then I think on the court, I think my hardest experience would definitely be the Final Four my sophomore year, where I missed the shot. I think that was like a complete different mindset for me, just because understanding that like everything is for a reason. And sometimes it's still hard for me to understand, but I think that's the beauty of God and learning his word and his promises, is that he doesn't expect you to be perfect every single day, or he's going to put you through trials and different stuff to continue to test your faith and understand that he's always there. And I think a prime example of that is being able to come back the next year and win a national championship. And it's just continued to, my faith has just continued to be something that I'm able to be stead strong. And it's really hard to not want to thank God and not want to read his word, especially when you see the great things that he continues to do for me, my family, and those around me. So it's definitely been something that I've been able to continue to grow stronger in, and I'm glad that I was able to find my way with that.
This has kind of been like a fairy tale. Like I said, from the moment I met you when you were in high school, I was like, yeah, this is it. She's going to be amazing.
So you didn't think I was going to be good when I was 6? Why are we even at this table?
But let me tell you something, right?
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not kidding. I just know
we can talk about it after.
We'll talk about it after. But let me tell you something. You talk about people coming in your life at the right time, and I believe in divine timing. You had an opportunity in college to play here in the tournament at UVI. And I was like, what are the chances that we have a Virgin Islander on a kick, team, and she gets to come home? What was that experience like to play?
We lost the first game.
I know, I was there. I almost got thrown out of UVI that night.
They probably should have thrown me out. Did you see the way I was playing? Anyways, Anyways, whatever. We can talk about that later. It was honestly a great experience just because growing up, I came to Paradise Jam. Like,
Yeah.
I came, I'd watch the games, I'd be cheering, just always engaged. And so to be able to come back, that's like definitely a full circle moment that
Yeah.
I'm glad I had the experience. And we did end up winning the whole thing because, you know, we point differential and, you know,
Yep.
we made that layup at the end and everybody was mad, but we were happy. And so it was a great experience overall. And I think it just allowed, the fans of the Virgin Islands to continue to be supportive because especially if they didn't know in that moment, like now they're able to see that.
Yeah, that was a moment of immense pride for all of us. Plus, you made ESPN top 10 plays in that tournament too, with a block that was just
And we won that
off
game.
the chain.
Can't talk
off
about
the
it.
chain.
It's my teamie now.
Let's talk about your off-the-court endeavors. What's your favorite thing to do when you're not focused on basketball? And outside of the broadcasting career, I know that the sky is the limit for you. So what are some of the things you want to pursue outside of broadcasting?
Oh, so things I like to do when I'm not playing basketball is sit at home in my bed, and turn on a Netflix show. That right there will top any other activity. I mean, once in a while, sure, I'll get my nails done, but really, Leslie, if we both know, getting your nails done is not enjoyable. You're sitting there for 2 hours, can't use your phone for more than 10 seconds.
Correct.
Like, what are we doing this for?
Correct.
But, and then after broadcasting, outside of broadcasting, I don't really know yet because I feel like I'm now getting into that space of I have all this extra free time. I do like to travel and I've been able to rack up a lot of miles recently, and so I'm really excited about that. But I think I'm still in the process of figuring that out, what I want to do outside of that. But basically basketball and training and broadcasting has really consumed my time, but it's been great.
You know, you are going to be representing the United States in Paris this summer.
That
Are you
is the goal.
excited about that?
That is the goal. We are claiming it. We are speaking it. I think it would be a great opportunity to make the Olympic team. I mean, hopefully we're able to find out soon. I know we have another training camp coming up, but that would definitely be a blessing.
Well, you know, we call it into existence here.
We do.
We just know it's like it's gonna happen. It's
Are
gonna
you
be.
coming?
You know what?
Here
my
we go.
husband's from France and is a French citizen.
So does that mean you're coming?
But
or
I'm
no?
going to be in a different part of
Leslie,
Europe this summer.
why do we have these? You bring up Paris, you're not coming. Like, it's all right.
You know what? I might have to
Book
switch
your
things
flight.
around. I might
Book
have
your
to. I might
flight.
have to just now. You're putting the pressure on me.
Thank you.
See, this is the expert broadcaster, and you turning the tables, and I love it all. One last thing, your parents, and like they're good friends of mine, and you know people have heard about the sacrifice, but hearing about the sacrifice sometimes, or you know, it kind of, I don't want to say it becomes cliche, but people sometimes don't realize that you have to be consistent to be able to produce somebody like you. And your parents have really, amplified that. For the young Virgin Islander that might be out there or who might be watching this show with their parents, what are words of encouragement or words of instruction that you would give to them?
For the kids, I would definitely say, one, trust God because He has a plan for your life. It's don't compete, don't compare with the person next to you, but also surround yourself with people that know your goals, know what you want to do, and just continue to work at it. I think that's the biggest part, is having confidence in what you want to do and just continuing to put in the work. And then something for the parents, I'll definitely say my parents made a lot of sacrifices, and you just have to continue to trust God because He has opened so many doors. I mean, just speaking from experience, I know that my parents did. It was more than just sending us to Massachusetts.
Yep.
It was sacrificing stuff that they wanted to make sure that we had what we needed for AAU, whether that was making sure we had, we were able to travel with the team. And it was a lot more than that. I mean, they let us on their credit card, and paid the bill. I was swiping Chick-fil-A like no other. Are you kidding? And I didn't have to worry about that. But you know what I do now? I do have to worry about it now.
Well,
so parents, keep the kids on the credit card bill, please. It literally makes it easier for us. But honestly, just continue to invest in your kids. I think that's the biggest thing. Don't look at what could potentially be hard in the moment, but think about the future and what doors could be opened.
Well, I have a quick question. When you come back home, what's one of the things that you like to eat? When you just came back home,
Ooh.
What's one of your favorite things you like to eat?
Probably like a Johnny cake or... Ooh.
Do you have a favorite dish?
I'm like big curry chicken girl. I'm a big curry chicken girl. Sign me up. But my grandma, let me tell you, she made some chicken noodle soup the other day.
On the money.
Just know I had a bowl and a half, okay? And I am not mad about it.
Well, I got you something special because I know you like them tropical chicken wings. So I gotta order for you that
No,
I'm
you
gonna give to
don't.
you. Yes, I do, right here in the studio.
No, you don't. I didn't want to say that and sound greedy. Listen, where is it?
We got it for you right here. But anyway, thank you so
Sign
much.
me
Our
up.
time is up. I appreciate you
Of
coming on
course.
the show. This was awesome. And folks, stay tuned. Up next, we'll hear from this week's Power Panel. But first, here's a quick look at the topics that will fuel our discussion.
We're coming full circle and closing out the last in a series of meetings to hear from our taxi cab operators in the territory about their needs.
3 St. Croix taxi operators spoke at a sparsely attended town hall meeting on March 8th, aimed at addressing concerns within the local taxi industry.
And there's a lot of disturbances in the taxi industry, especially with these guys who calling themselves Uber. You know, we're having a big problem. We shot with these guys driving taxi up and down the road calling themselves Uber. They're bold enough now to be coming in front of us and picking up people and then cuss us when we talk to them about illegal taxi driving. And like they said, they have no police officers now belong to us, so they could do as they like.
Taxi Commission Executive Director Vernice Gumbs acknowledged a problem with enforcement on St. Croix, stating that despite her efforts, she has been unsuccessful in obtaining assistance from the Virgin Islands Police Department.
I've been reaching out since January of this year via phone and having personally to meet on the street with Commissioner Martinez for a sit down to see how we can get us some assistance, especially in the St. Croix district, knowing that we do not have any taxi enforcement officers on that island. I've reached out again in February, and to date, I am still awaiting.
Taxi operator Edwin Stephen noted the decrease in the number of licensed taxis on the Big Island.
We do have a shortage of taxis here on St. Croix, and one of the main reasons is the issue with the coronavirus wiped out a lot of our drivers, and also a lot of drivers did retire also, and with the government not issuing the taxi examination also put a damp on our taxis around here. So we're very short with those taxis also. And that's why it's taking so long for those passengers, which we call the road runners, to get to and from work.
In response to the government's delay in issuing taxi examinations, Gum said the Taxi Cab Commission Board, the Department of Tourism, and the University of the Virgin Islands were collaborating to finalize the details for resuming taxi classes.
One major delay, I do believe, is attributed to not having promulgated rules and regs in place, so that those persons attending these classes are knowledgeable of the rules and regs that governs the industry, and that they must abide by to avoid any enforcement.
Taxi operator Paul Roberts said the local taxi industry is in a dire state, worsened by a lack of support and opportunities for younger generations to enter their profession.
This is the worst I ever seen it. Very worst I ever seen it. Because we lack of young people and we're not giving them the choice or the opportunity to come into the industry, that's why we face the problem. Why they're saying about Uber. But Uber will never solve the problem. We need to help the young people to get in the system, to learn the system, so we can move forward with this taxi industry.
The Senate Committee on Ethical Conduct is investigating an alleged sexual harassment incident that purportedly took place right before this legislative session came to order last November.
During that time, before the gavel was struck, Senator Johnson approached me. I was on my way to the restroom. I extended my hand. He in turn extended his hand, and I'm thinking it's just a friendly handshake. He proceeded to tell me about some amendments he had. Well, I said, okay, I hear you. Can you please release my hand? I need to go to the bathroom. He proceeded to then squeeze further down on my hand, and I told him I need to go to the restroom. And he wouldn't loose my hand. And he said, whatever I can do in the bathroom, I could do right here on the floor. We are all grown people. I proceeded to call out to the sergeant of arms at that point. And then he called out and just dropped my hand.
Joseph took action following the alleged incident, filing a complaint with the Office of Senate President Novell Francis Jr.
I filed a complaint for sexual harassment as well as assault and battery. And I asked that Senator Frankie Johnson apologize publicly.
Joseph alleged that this was not her first run-in with Johnson.
Incident occurred in 2021, I believe. What he said to me was verbally abusive. And so Senator Francis went, had a discussion, and he apologized. So I'm thinking everything is hunky-dory. And now it's no longer just verbal, it is physical.
When contacted by WTJX, Johnson refuted the allegations.
At the end of the day, she made an allegation that I refute, and there's no evidence behind of it at this point. But there's an investigation going on, and I prefer to not comment while they have this investigation. They asked me to write a report. I wrote a report in regards to what she said. Basically, was a handshake. And I think she stretched it out to what she wants to do it.
Senate President Novell Francis Jr. confirmed receipt of Joseph's complaint and Johnson's response and said the matter was forwarded to the Senate Committee on Ethical Conduct for review. Francis said the Ethics Committee is chaired by Senator Diane Capehart and said he would release the full committee makeup at a later time.
Once the report has been submitted to me, I will certainly release to the public all of the information that has been contained and who the committee makeup is. A final decision will be made by the whole via resolution to all of the senators.
Don't vote on someone else's word. It's called due process and justice. Therefore, colleagues, I'm asking y'all to vote a resounding no.
But his colleagues voted yes instead. All senators in the 34th legislature except Payne voted to expel him on July 20th, 2022 for violating the body's zero-tolerance policy against sexual harassment in connection to claims made by one of his staffers. Payne then filed a lawsuit contending that lawmakers may discipline but not expel a member. And in doing so, they disenfranchised the voters who elected him. Initially filed in the Superior Court, Payne's civil lawsuit has since been transferred to the VI Supreme Court, which heard oral arguments from both sides on March 12th. The main point of contention was whether the legislature had the authority to expel a senator. The legislature's attorney, Joseph Arellano, argued that the power of expulsion is an inherent power of the legislature. But Payne's attorney, Tristan Moore, argued that the body's expulsion of Payne went beyond its power and said that the only way out of the legislature was a recall. The case was heard before Supreme Court Chief Justice Reese Hodge and Associate Justices Maria Cabret and Ive Arlington Swan. Meanwhile, the legislative staffer who made the claims that led to Payne's expulsion has filed a civil lawsuit in Superior Court that accuses Payne of assault and false imprisonment and accused the entire lawmaking body of breaching confidentiality policies by allegedly mishandling her complaints. In her lawsuit, Danae DeSutte, who began working for Payne in 2021, alleges a series of incidents against him. Among these, she claims that following a Senate committee hearing on St. Croix, Payne locked her in his Kings Alley hotel room while brandishing a firearm. Additionally, she accuses Payne of defamation for publicly calling her a liar and alleges a pattern of deliberate, threatening, and wrongful actions aimed at intimidating her into submitting to his sexual advances. DeSutte's lawsuit targets not only the 34th legislature in its entirety, but also then Senate President Donna Fred Gregory and Marisol Castor, who served as Assistant Executive Director during the 34th legislature. The lawsuit asserts claims of invasion or violation of privacy, as well as intentional and negligent infliction of emotional distress. I'm now joined by attorney Key Walker, founder and managing attorney at the Walker Legal Group on St. Croix. Welcome to our St. Thomas studio.
Thank you.
Key.
It's good to be here.
And joining us on Comes with the Territory from our St. Croix studio is Neville James, former Senate president and currently the host of the best talk show in the Virgin Islands, Analyze This, on WTJX 93.1 FM. Thank you for being here, Neville. Now, you guys just heard the interview that we had with Aliyah Bosto. Tell me, as a Virgin Islander for you and as a female Virgin Islander, what are your thoughts and feelings? I mean, I get so excited about that young woman. She is just amazing.
I just love to see young Black women who exude confidence. And the level of confidence that Aliyah Bosto has, you can tell she's had that confidence from the time she was born. So I think that's beautiful. I thoroughly enjoyed the interview. It was a lot of banter. It was a lot of fun to listen to.
Yeah, and I love that light spirit, no nervousness. It's so natural for her.
Yep.
It comes with such ease, and that confidence that she exudes comes right out. Neville, you had a chance to listen to the interview, and I know you are a big sports fan. So what are your thoughts and feelings about Aliyah, what she's done thus far in her career, and what do you think is ahead for her in the future?
Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate her, and lucky you. You got to do that interview, you know what I'm saying? But I'm not surprised, Aliyah, from when I first found out about her, she showed nothing but class. She has a good support system behind her, and she's very comfortable in front of a microphone and on TV. So I think that actually, facilitates why she's being received so well. Want the team to do better. Hopefully they get the #1 pick this year. I'm hearing that, they're already speculating that a young lady from Iowa, who's name I go hold off it right now because we want to Tampa or not, but the speculation is that the female version of Steph Curry could be joining Aliyah's team in Indiana. And if that's the case, I expect to see them have major improvement because that will only make the game easier for Aliyah. And the more dominant Aliyah is, the better it is for Aliyah and her supporters here in the Virgin Islands.
Well, getting back to the sports side of it and what she's doing now in the WNBA, her team had an undefeated season. Then they won a national championship. I think in the course of her college career, she only lost maybe 6 or 7 games in 4 years, which is unbelievable. Dawn Staley at the University of South Carolina right now is on 101-3 record in 3 seasons. She's only lost 3 games. I mean, she's had nothing but success. Well, let me ask you, Key, for young Virgin Islanders that might be playing sports right now, what kind of inspiration you think that is for them?
I think it's huge. And the way that we have supported her and received her and just her personality and the way she gives back and she comes back home and she has the camp with the young girls, I think that will just, encourage those behind her to at least try and follow in her footsteps. I think she's a great role model.
Neville, how long before we see another young Virgin Islander in the WNBA?
You never know, hopefully, sometime soon. But the one thing I like about what Aliyah has done for University of South Carolina is that she went into a system that was a very good system. Now it's a dominant system because this year the team has yet to lose a game, which means that she carried on that culture that she inherited, took it to another level. And, Aliyah Bosto's name will always be in the annals of greatness for the University of South Carolina, the Southeastern Conference, and NCAA basketball, women's basketball. I know she's a professional. And I heard the conversation earlier, looking to get a gold medal this year for Team USA.
Yep, absolutely. Now let's delve into some of our news topics, starting with the recent taxi town hall on St. Croix. In the clip we played, taxi operators, 2 of them, spoke about competition from Uber not Uber, the ride-sharing app that isn't available in the Virgin Islands, but Uber, a St. Croix business that has people talking. We recently spoke with the owner, Monroe Sanderson, and here's what he said.
May of this year is going to be 24 months. What I have here is a ride share that I put together. You understand? I literally created this entity so that people of the Virgin Islands with nice cars, with insurance on them, you know what I'm saying, can drive around and make extra money to pay these ridiculous bills. The name of my business is VI Uber, UBAH, Transportation and Tours. I am not a taxi. 99.98% of my rides are all pre-arranged rides. You don't flag the Uber down on the road. I don't send 20 cars at the airport when American Airlines coming in. I don't have the guys sitting at the taxi stand in town. I currently have 8 vehicles running up and down the road at St. Croix. 24 hours a day, I have somebody available. It don't matter where they are, where they want to go, when they want to go. Trust and believe. VI Uber accommodates everyone. I'm not illegal and I'm not legal. You understand? But I'm not also violating any codes or any laws in the Virgin Islands. That's why they have not issued me a citation as yet.
Neville, one of the things you do on your show all the time is you like to point out how the differences between how we say things on the different islands. Today was the Taman conversation, which I love. But we got VI Uber going on in St. Croix. So after you heard what that gentleman just said, what are your thoughts about a rideshare service and how it's impacting the taxi drivers on the island of St. Croix?
You know, I look at it from multiple perspectives, but the main perspective is I really feel for the taxi drivers from this standpoint, right? It's Leslie, Key, the listening audience, we are in the throes of a technological advancements that things are just happening by the hour. And Uber, Lyft, whatever ride service folks choose to use, they are completely modern day compared to taxi service as we have known it over the years. And I believe that the taxi drivers need to do something, right, to incorporate the ability for folks who want to travel and to use taxis to be Uber-like. You know what I'm saying? As it stands right now, you know, it's hard for them to compete because everybody does everything with their cell phone. You know, taxis are a retail business. Come off the plane, I get my bags, I'm not renting a car, I'm looking for a taxi. If I'm not looking for a taxi, it means that I've already hooked up myself with some type of service. Now, on the other hand, though, you know, naming this thing Uber, you know what I mean? I mean, really, it's kind of insulting if you ask me. You know what I'm saying? Because basically, you know, you're using what is an established global name and you're modifying it. Now, you're being creative, but with all due respect, you know, you're kind of rubbing it in the taxi driver's face. So I hope that they could work out something, and I'm hoping that the taxi drivers and the associations actually accept the reality that where we are now in our existence, they actually got to come to the game, and it's not the retail business that we've known it to be prior to the existence of Uber, Lyft, and all these other ride service entities.
Key, from a legal perspective, Uber, the international company, has a tremendous legal record. They've taken on taxi drivers in Nevada, in Las Vegas, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco. Every time they go to court, they win. So in terms of a legal perspective, I don't see taxi drivers standing a chance against anybody that develops a rideshare program in the territory. But let's talk about technology and innovation, and then the legality here in the territory, and whether or not it could be different from what's happened in the States.
Listen, legally, I'm here for it because you have to change to accommodate the times. To take such a stubborn position to say we're going to continue doing what we were doing 30 years ago and everyone has to accept it and all the innovation and technology needs to stay out of it is, I think, a completely non-productive position to take. So legally, the taxi cab drivers are going to have a difficult time, and they don't necessarily have the resources for the fight that's starting to develop. You also have local rideshare similar type businesses already that are properly licensed, like Boomerang Eats and the services that deliver meals. It would be very easy for any of those local businesses to just switch over into the rideshare field, and they're waiting for it. They're monitoring it, and as soon as they have the first opportunity to jump into the rideshare space, they're going to do it. And it's unfortunate for the taxi drivers, and I do sympathize with them, but every other industry has to change with the times. What makes this industry so special? You need to accommodate your customers and clients, and if you're not accommodating them, then this is what's going to happen.
There's an old adage, Neville, if you can't beat them, join them. And I think that taxi drivers need to look at ways in investing in these types of programs where they can make money perhaps passively and invest in the technology, because really and truly, it's only the GIS project completion that is holding back these types of rideshare services and delivery services from excelling. Once the addressing program is done in the territory, which is expected to be completed under this administration, under the guidance of Lieutenant Governor Tregenza Roach, it's over.
You're not lying, man. You hit the nail on the head. And, I was thinking back, and Key hit the nail on the head. You got to advance with the times. I remember there was a time, right? I spent, a little over a decade in the political arena. And retail politics was cool, touching the flesh, what have you. But then in 2008, because I got into the arena in 2004, by 2008, there was something called Facebook. And that changed the whole dynamic. If you were not campaigning online, or via online and touching thousands of people, real quickly, then you were playing from a position of weakness and a deficit position. And we need the taxi drivers. I understand that there's something about the in-person relationship, and some folks just like it the old-fashioned way. But in this modern day, in 2024 and going forward, they are going to have to change the way they want to do business, and they gotta adopt the reality that technology is a game that's going to be here forever, and they got to get involved. I agree with you and Key 100%.
Well, I tell people my dad's 89 years old and an iPhone user, so about to turn 90 this year, and if he can do it, anybody can do it. But let's move on. Oh, yeah. The Payne lawsuit against the legislature is really a topic that has dragged on, and finally the case was heard before the Supreme Court. Now, I have my opinions about this, but from a legal perspective, we have the benefit of a legal mind. Having heard the clip that we played and knowing the history behind it, where do you stand on the two arguments that was before the Supreme Court?
I stand with the legislature. You have the separation of powers. They need to be able to discipline, expel their members. It's allowed under the Revised Organic Act. Every now and then this issue comes up. I think the last time it came up may have been the lawsuit involving Kevin Rodriguez. And the legislature prevailed because it is a separate branch of government. The legislature doesn't step into the personnel affairs of the judiciary. It can't step into the personnel affairs of the executive branch. I think fundamentally it's a separation of powers issue, and the legislature should prevail.
Neville, you've spoken about this very issue on this show, and as a former legislator, you have been very clear on where the law stands on this. But now that the arguments have been heard and we had media coverage, I think Justice Arlington Swan used the word in terms of the defense's argument as being oblivious. And I thought that was quite sharp, but it kind of goes in tune with the personality of Judge Swan. Before the Supreme Court, were you expecting that kind of reaction from any of the judges?
The justices.
The justices, excuse me, correct.
Yeah. Sometimes, right, you got to say things that may not be politically correct, but you got to make your point. And I think that's what we're dealing with here. Attorney Walker is 100% correct. I've been on the show, on this show, we've talked about it. I've talked about it, analyze this. I'm a history major, right? And I like to use history and facts as a foundation for the positions that I'm taking. And the notion that a legislative body, right, an entity like the Virgin Islands Legislature, which in 1989, and I go back over this every single time, expelled Kenneth Mapp for a voting in multiple jurisdictions violation. And then, and I was not a part of that legislature. I was still 24, 25 years old, still wet behind the ears politically, as they don't say. And then in 2017, right, I guess, 38 years later, whatever, or 28 years later, whatever it is. 28 years later, we had a situation, and it was not about an expulsion, it was about an admission, because what had happened was Kevin Rodriguez had won a seat in the 2016 senatorial race, the district race in St. Thomas and St. John. Lawsuits were filed questioning his jurisdictional capabilities because he had filed for bankruptcy in Tennessee. The powers transferred from the election system to the courts, and then once we convened, the authority to deal with that matter rested with, at that time, the 32nd legislature.
Mhm.
And ultimately, we voted not to admit him. And we had that power. We're vested with that
Absolutely.
power. The Revised Organic Act makes it clear that the legislature has the ability to sanction its own members.
Now-
Sometimes it's suspension, sometimes it's expulsion.
Yes. Danae D'Souza now has a lawsuit against the Virgin Islands legislature against former Senate President Donna Fred Gregory. This takes on a whole different complexity. She also alleges that the legislature mishandled her complaint. What is that process like, having worked as a counsel to the Virgin Islands legislature, when an employee brings a suit of this nature and then it has to go before the ethics committee? What is that process like for, in terms of the logistics of it? How does it play out?
Well, I believe her suit goes to the court. It's my understanding that that's where she has filed, and it's litigated like any other employment case. This is not the first time the legislature has been sued in an employment matter, and I think it will just play out like any other litigation. 9 times out of 10, there'll be a settlement. Very rarely does this type of case make it all the way to trial.
And when there's a settlement like this, that means the taxpayers end up paying for, by default. We're the ones that have to pay for this legal expense.
As you will if there's a judgment that's issued. So, settlements are good in that it probably saves money. It saves litigation costs. It saves the risk of a high judgment. So it plays out like any other lawsuit. And I don't think there's anything in particularly that would be different about Ms. D'Souza's lawsuit.
Neville, this lawsuit, again, the legislature, and this isn't the first time, as Attorney Walker has mentioned, that the legislature finds themselves with this type of employment. It's not an employment matter, with a sexual harassment lawsuit where a sitting senator and an employee is involved. What steps can the body take to prevent us revisiting matters like this in the future?
Well, we've had situations before. Attorney Walker is absolutely correct. This is a matter for the courts. The legislature would want to consider maybe settling this simply because you're still dealing with the Stephen Payne matter. It's at the Supreme Court level. And there comes a point where you have to start factoring, the interpretation, the public view of the legislature. Maybe we need to just settle this to get it behind us. I'm not telling the legislature what to do, but I'm saying that's a consideration. But you're absolutely correct, Leslie. This is a whole different ballgame we're talking about now, because an employee, this is not a member now, this is an employee, is not only is saying that the senator that she worked for violated her personally, but she's saying that the institution's leadership actually undermined her and mishandled, her allegations and her claim against what Judge Senator Payne did. And like I said, as a former senator, I'm partial to the body. I apologize for that, but it is what it is. And Attorney Walker is correct. Maybe settlement might be the best way to go, because this thing seems to be a story that is taking on a life of its own every time you turn around. First, we were dealing with the Payne matter. Remember, the question with the Payne matter was, why is it taking so long to be fully adjudicated? Now it's at the Supreme Court level, and now we have a situation where the employee who was filing complaints against Senator Payne is now filing a lawsuit. That's in court as well. I'm thinking maybe they need to look at settlement as the primary way of bringing this to some type of finality.
You know, Neville mentioned something that's very interesting because our next topic that we're going to talk about is yet another sexual harassment allegation in the legislature between Senator Franklin Johnson and Senators Carla Joseph. So the perception now of the body, when, you know, residents of the territory look back and say, okay, we have another lawsuit that we potentially have to pay for, and then we have this next allegation between two senators. What's going on in the Virgin Islands legislature? What do you think the public perception and respect for the body is like right now? Because in national TV shows, you know, these kinds of things are measured. The president's approval rating, the Congress's approval rating. What would you say that is here in the Virgin Islands right now?
I don't think it's any different from any other organization. Remember, Waste Management got hit with that lawsuit, and a huge settlement came out of that.
Yeah.
So what's happening in the legislature is not any different than what happens in any other organization in any other branch of government. I think the legislature, being a political body that's only, you know, has 2-year lifespans, I think there's probably more focus put on it. And then the circumstances surrounding Stephen Payne and his other legal issues, I think makes this more juicier and salacious to talk about. But at the end of the day, the legislature is not the only organization that's confronted with lawsuits from employees or claims of sexual harassment. Now, the Carla Joseph Senator Frankie Johnson matter is unique because it's one member against the other.
Yes.
And I think that is where there's a bit of a different circumstance. And I don't know what to say. That's difficult. And my opinion on that is that people get too comfortable with each other.
That's very interesting.
You know, so when you're talking about sexual harassment, a lot of it, unless it's extremely egregious, a lot of it is subjective. And I think people just need to err on the side of caution. Don't touch anyone. Don't make these type of comments because you don't know how it's going to be received. So I'm not saying that as an excuse for Frankie Johnson's behavior, and I'm not passing judgment on Senator Joseph's complaint, but at the end of the day, people just need to stop being so comfortable with each other.
And to be honest, Key, you bring up a really important point in that in some instances, some Virgin Islanders may say, well, that's just how we talk to each other. And I mean, that's not politically correct. It's not even, you know, logically or socially correct when you think about it. But you will have individuals in our community that might feel that way. Neville, let me come to you and ask you a question about when the ethics committee that has to be composed to investigate this matter. What is that process like? And then I also want to ask you about whether or not within the legislature and as a senator, did you receive sexual harassment training as some organizations do?
To answer the latter question, first answer is yes. The division of the human resources division within the legislature, they set that up for everybody, and everybody has to go through that. So that's number one. And we actually passed sexual harassment legislature in my very first term in the 26th legislature. I believe Senator Craig Barsinger was big with that. So I'm glad that we have that on the books. That's number one. Number two, I want to make a distinction to the good counsel with respect to a major distinction between what we saw with the Waste Management Authority and what we're dealing with here now. Unlike the Waste Management Authority, Attorney Walker and Leslie and the audience, the people believe that they own the legislature, and they do. They don't own the Waste Management Authority. I mean, they own everything, right? Because it's taxpayer funded. But they are the ones who actually determine who is in the legislature. So there is an ownership mentality that exists with the residents of the Virgin Islands, in particular those who vote. So that's why this one is a little bit different. And the last thing voters want to see, right, is that the members that they are electing to the legislature are doing things because they want them to be productive and work together off the top. But the last thing they want is to see them doing things that creating this type of perception. And you touched on it, Leslie. We have dysfunctional legislatures. We have productive legislatures. Right now, on the mainland, we have a Congress that is struggling. Attorney Walker brought up a good point with respect to this type of thing happens all the time. As a matter of fact, I believe today we read that Congressman Matt Gaetz, or earlier this week, Matt Gaetz, was subpoenaed because he's dealing with some sex trafficking claim. One of his partners are back in the day. So we're not dealing with anything absolutely unique to what's going on here, but at the same time, we're a smaller jurisdiction, and everybody knows each other, and it gets personal, and that from that perspective, very personal.
Real quickly, touch on the composition of that ethics committee that will be investigating this. Well, how does that process work?
Typically, the ethics committee is composed of 5 members. The Senate President puts that committee together. Legal counsel plays a big part in guiding the process. They let the chairman of the ethics committee know what kind of questions they can ask, what the parameters are. And it's really all about receiving testimony, getting everybody's perspective, point of view. Then they bring it to the full body, back to the president. The president will make it available to the full body. And then at some point, the members as a whole will make a determination. The ethics committee can only give a recommendation. They can't sanction. That sanctioning ability comes from the 15 members of the legislature.
Key, in listening to Senator Johnson refute the allegations, he mentioned that, it's being investigated, so he didn't want to comment, but he's like, there's no evidence. And in a sense, I think that individuals know that. If we're, given the situation, it's just a hallway, you and I are talking, and only 2 of us are present. How does the ethics committee get the evidence per se, and what evidence could there be? And you examine evidence all the time as an attorney, so you have experience in this realm. In a situation like this, how do you think they go about actually figuring out what actually happened?
Are there any surveillance cameras in that area? Did Senator Joseph come back and complain to someone and say, do you know what this man just did to me? So there's different things that you can do, and then the ethics committee will have to make a determination. And then, this is not the first run-in for Senator Johnson, not as far as a sexual harassment claim, but remember when he made those comments about Senator Fred Gregory, that were quite strong. So is this a pattern? Right, so I think there's different things that the committee can look at with the assistance of their legal counsel to make a determination as to the likelihood of whether this happened.
And Neville, let me come back to you real quickly because we have to wrap things up. If the ethics committee does find that there is sufficient evidence to perhaps expel Senator Johnson from the legislature, what is the process then?
That's where the Senate President comes into play. Because he is the leader of the branch of government, there'll be a recommendation. Legal counsel, internal legal, the chief legal counsel of the legislature will let the president know if, in fact, the ethics committee conducted the hearing process and the entire process within the rules of the legislature, if, in fact, they've actually met the threshold for a potential expulsion. But at the end of the day, it's still going to be about the members of the body. Even if the evidence says that a member has violated another member's property and person, you still need 8 out of 15 members, or a majority of the members who have voted on that particular day, to actually vote along those lines. We're seeing that right now. Remember, we had the situation in the aftermath of January 6th, where you had U.S. senators who had the ability to penalize former President Donald Trump for good. And they said, no, we ain't going that road because we believe this belongs in a court of law. And now we're finding out that, that position that they took some 3 years ago might be backfiring on them. So this is a very, very important process. Got to make sure all the steps and all the protocols are followed. And hopefully we can get some resolution. There is one thing I do want to say, though. I heard from Senator Johnson.
Real quickly, because I got to wrap.
Lack of evidence perspective. But I'd like to hear, I'm innocent, and there's a lack of evidence.
Well,
that's the position that I would like to hear.
Let me tell you, when I know the both of you are on, we're going to have a bomb show today. You guys brought it. Thank you both for appearing on the show. And that's all the show we have for you today. But be sure to tune in next Sunday at 1 p.m. for an all-new episode of Comes with the Territory. In the meantime, for your news updates, tune into the WTJX newsfeed on weekdays at 5 p.m. on 93.1 FM or by downloading the WTJX app. I'm Leslie Kamisiang, and for all of us here at WTJX Channel 12, take care.